Today, like many days before, the sun rose on a scene of deep sorrow in Gaza. The news is filled with more pain and loss for the Palestinian people. Early this morning on June 26, 2025, Israeli attacks continued across the region. Hospitals, which are already struggling to help so many, reported that at least 35 more people were killed. These are not just numbers, they are mothers, fathers, sons and daughters whose lives were cut short. The attacks happened in different parts of Gaza, showing that no place is truly safe for families who are just trying to survive each day. In the northern part of Gaza, the sounds of explosions brought new fear and devastation. In Gaza City and the surrounding areas, families mourned the loss of 19 loved ones. A particularly heartbreaking event occurred at a school in the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood. This school was not a place of learning anymore, but a shelter for people who had already lost their homes. An Israeli strike hit this shelter, taking the lives of at least 9 people. Most of the victims were women and children who were seeking safety within its walls, a place they hoped would protect them from the violence outside. This recent tragedy is part of a larger ongoing pattern of suffering. Just yesterday, on June 25th, Palestinian officials reported that between 79 and 90 people were killed in a single 24-hour period. Imagine the families receiving this news, the empty spaces left behind, and the constant fear that grips every heart. The world watches as these numbers climb higher and higher, each digit representing a human story, a future that will never be. The weight of this loss is immense, and it is felt in every corner of Gaza, from the crowded shelters to the damaged streets. The human cost of this conflict is almost too much to comprehend. For the people living in Gaza, life has become a daily struggle for existence. They face not only the physical danger of attacks, but also the emotional toll of living in a war zone. Children grow up surrounded by destruction, their dreams replaced by nightmares. The simple joys of life, playing outside, going to school, sharing a meal with family, have become distant memories. The world must not look away from their suffering. We must see the faces behind the headlines and remember their humanity. The conflict is not only happening in Gaza. Its shadow is growing longer and wider, touching other countries in the region. Tensions between Iran, Israel and the United States are very high. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, recently spoke to his country. He congratulated his military for what he called a victory over Israel. He also sent a strong warning, saying that American military bases in the area could be attacked if Iran feels threatened again. This shows that the danger of a much larger war is very real and could involve more powerful nations. At the same time, there are some small signs of communication. The American President, Donald Trump, has announced that officials from the United States and Iran are planning to hold talks next week. This could be a chance to lower the temperature and find a peaceful way forward. However, the situation is very complicated. Iran has also made a decision that increases tensions. It has decided to stop working with the United Nations nuclear watchdog, the IAEA. Iran says this is because the agency's information was used by Israel and the US to justify attacks on its nuclear sites. This back and forth of threats and diplomacy makes the future very uncertain. Iran has formally protested to the United Nations. It does not accept the American reason of self-defense for the recent strikes on its territory. These strikes have added another layer of violence to an already unstable region. Each country is trying to show its strength, but this show of force comes at a terrible cost to ordinary people. The world holds its breath, hoping that leaders will choose words over weapons and prevent the conflict from spiraling out of control. The people in the Middle East are caught in the middle of these geopolitical games. From Gaza to Iran, families just want to live in peace and safety. They want a future for their children that is free from fear and violence. The decisions made by leaders in Tehran, Tel Aviv and Washington have a direct impact on these families' lives. The path to peace is difficult and requires courage and a willingness to understand the other side. The international community is watching closely, hoping for a breakthrough that can pull the region back from the brink of a devastating war. The price of this long and terrible war is measured in human lives, and the numbers are staggering. In Gaza, the toll is almost unimaginable. According to the health ministry there, at least 56,156 people have been killed since the war began. More than 132,000 others have been wounded, many with life-changing injuries. These are not just statistics, they represent entire generations that have been lost and communities that have been shattered. The scale of this loss is a deep wound on the heart of humanity, a tragedy that will be felt for many, many years to come. The war did not begin in a vacuum. It is important to remember the event that started this latest cycle of violence. On October 7, 2023, Hamas-led attacks on Israel resulted in the deaths of an estimated 1,139 people. Over 200 people were also taken captive, their families left in a state of constant worry and uncertainty. The pain of that day is still very raw for many Israelis. In the more recent direct conflict between Iran and Israel, the violence also claimed many lives. Israeli attacks on Iran killed at least 627 people, while Iranian strikes on Israel killed at least 28 people. The soldiers fighting in this war are also paying a heavy price. On June 25th, 7 Israeli soldiers were killed in a single incident in southern Gaza. This was one of the deadliest days for the Israeli military in months. This brings the total number of Israeli soldiers killed since the start of the war to 879. Each soldier's death sends ripples of grief through their families and communities. It is a reminder that in war there are victims on all sides. Young people are sent to fight and many never return home, leaving behind parents, partners and children. Beyond the numbers, there is a deep humanitarian crisis unfolding, especially in Gaza. Life has become a desperate search for the most basic necessities. Aid groups report that it is extremely dangerous for people to even try to get food. Over 500 people have been shot and killed by Israeli forces while trying to access aid. Clean water is also incredibly scarce, with most water facilities no longer working. UNICEF has warned that the number of children suffering from severe malnutrition is rising rapidly. This is a crisis of survival, where every day is a battle against hunger, thirst and disease. In the midst of all this darkness, there are small glimmers of hope and continued efforts to find peace. The world's leaders are involved, trying to stop the fighting. A ceasefire between Israel and Iran, negotiated by the United States, thankfully took hold on June 24th. This has lowered the immediate threat of a wider regional war, providing a small space for diplomacy to work. However, this fragile calm does not extend to Gaza, where the fighting continues with devastating consequences for the people who live there, who long for a lasting silence of the guns. In Gaza, the path to peace has been much more difficult. A 2-month ceasefire broke down in March 2025, and the fighting started again. The main disagreement is about the future. Hamas is demanding a permanent end to the war and a complete withdrawal of Israeli forces. Israel, however, rejects this demand, stating its goal is to ensure Hamas can no longer pose a threat. President Trump has suggested that the recent U.S. strikes on Iran might somehow help move the Gaza ceasefire talks forward, but it is unclear how this will happen. The people of Gaza are trapped in this political deadlock. The hope for a better future rests on the idea that peace is still possible. It requires immense courage, compassion, and a commitment from all sides to see the humanity in one another. The world must continue to call for a ceasefire, for the protection of all civilians, and for a political solution that respects the rights and dignity of both Palestinians and Israelis. We must support the aid workers who risk their lives to bring food and medicine to those in need. We must amplify the voices of peacemakers on both sides who are working tirelessly for a just and lasting resolution. Let us hold on to a message of hope. Let us hope for a day when children in Gaza and Israel can grow up without fear, a day when mothers do not have to mourn their children and communities can begin to heal and rebuild. Peace is not just the absence of war, it is the presence of justice, security and freedom for all people. This may seem like a distant dream today, on June 26, 2025, but it is a dream we must never give up on. The world has a responsibility to help turn this dream into a reality for everyone affected by this heartbreaking conflict.